60 years later, and we are still learning about the crash, including from this recently discovered film of the aftermath. We're showing it to you publicly for the first time after it was rediscovered by relatives of the local fire chief at the time, who insisted on documenting those difficult days. September 1st, 1961, passenger air travel was still in its adolescence. TWA Flight 529 was hopscotching across the country. It had just taken off from Midway Airport in Chicago, heading for Las Vegas.
At the time, this was all plowed field. This was cornfield and soybeans.
Frank Trout was a 17-year-old volunteer firefighter back then. Just after 2 o'clock in the morning, the siren sounded, summoning his squad to a farm field just west of Route 83 in what is now the village of Willowbrook.
We were totally unprepared for anything like this. We went down the field looking for anyone that may be alive. Some people were still strapped in their seats.
The DuPage County Sheriff's Office and Fire Department were notified of the disaster immediately. The DuPage County Coroner was represented on the scene by 2:30 a.m.
All 78 souls aboard died that day. It was, at the time, the deadliest single-plane disaster in U.S. history, and it happened near the height of the U.S. crisis with Cuba.
I thought they bombed Chicago. I mean, honest to God. And I laid back down thinking, well, this is it.
It just shook the whole house.
The days and weeks that followed were equally unsettling as crews combed the field for wreckage, documenting the destruction and death.
This is toward the end of the field where the plane stopped, or the debris, and that one sailor still had his uniform on. That's what I remember to be in this area.
One of the things that really kind of bothered me over all the years is that when I walked back there, I'd swear I heard someone say help. Oh, I think about it all the time. Yeah, I think about it all the time.
It's hard to tell what a lot of them are. I'll bet there are 1,000.
60 years later,
Because they're small. There are a lot of small pieces.
a small but committed group has gathered pieces of the plane found over the years.
The residents say in the winter when the ground heaves, pieces will pop up out of the ground.
Weaving them together to not only paint a picture of a little-known aviation tragedy.
This is a baby Ben clock that was recovered at the site, probably belonging to one of the passengers, which shows the exact time of the crash, 2:04 a.m.
But also to tell the stories of the 5 crew members and 73 passengers who perished.
The most emotional names are the families. There were Grant Chamberlain, James Chamberlain, Nancy, Richard, Edward Jr. and Edward Sr. And then there were a lot of Maloneys. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Maloneys that were killed.
The stewardess one this was going to be her last flight, and she was pregnant. She was going to announce that to her husband when she got back to California, got killed. The other stewardess had one more flight after this one, and she was going to get married.
Honoring their memories is why this group has finally, after all these years, gathered enough support to replace a simple cross with a permanent memorial. A memorial not just to the lives lost, but also to the lives changed that day.
I haven't been back here since the crash.
Frank Trout went on to serve in Vietnam and then a long career with local fire and police departments.
There's a house that was there, and that's the one that the roof melted.
Glenn Hack avoids flying.
It's just amazing that it didn't hit any houses.
Margaret Hack still looks to the sky with a skeptical eye.
And when one would come over the house for, oh my God, several years, I would duck. So sometimes I still do that.
All these years later.
Yeah, yeah.
The ill-fated TWA flight was one of 6 U.S. airliner crashes that year that claimed a total of 222 lives. in a different era in aviation, but one that has reverberated for decades.
Years later, an elderly couple came by and knocked on my door and stuff and wanted to know where the plane crashed, so I showed them, and they said, yeah, our daughter was on that plane. And I go, oh gosh.
So what brought down that 4-propeller TWA Constellation? Well, the Civil Aeronautics Board determined it was one single steel bolt that fell out after takeoff, causing the pilots to lose control. Ben Bradley, WGN News.